Put up Wendy Grant. All stand. All persons having anything to do before my lords, the Queen's justices, draw near and give your attendance. Is your name Wendy Grant?
Yes.
Wendy Grant, on this indictment, you stand charged with murder, and the particulars are that on February the 20th, 1983, at the Coach House, Public House, Wellington Road, Fulchester, you murdered Anna Grant. To this indictment, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God, the evidence I give shall be the truth.
The case you're
the whole
about to
truth,
see
and
is
nothing but
fictional.
the truth.
The procedure, however, is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public.
Breakspears,
Yes,
and you reside at 34 Milford Crescent, Fulchester.
that's correct.
Mrs. Breakspears, before
Mr.
moving
Justice
to your
Lorimer
present address
presides
May
in the
last
case of the
year,
Queen
am I
against
right in
Grant.
saying that you lived with your husband, Frank Breakspears, in a service flat over a public house, the Coach House, Wellington Road, Fulchester?
That's right.
Your husband was and still is the manager of the Coach House.
Yes.
But you and he are now separated, correct?
Yes.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a hairdresser.
In fact, rather more than this. You are the proprietor of a successful salon and beauty parlour called Snips in Market Street, Fulchester, correct?
Yes.
You have owned and managed this establishment for how many years?
About 10.
Mrs. Breakspears, could we begin with the evening of Friday, February the 19th of last year? How did you spend this particular evening? Can you recall?
Yes, until 8 I was at the salon going over the accounts, then I went home for supper.
Home at this time being the Coach House in Wellington Road, correct?
The pub, yes.
In the early hours of Saturday, February the 20th, did something or somebody wake you?
Yes, there was a long ring on the doorbell, the one to the flat, I mean, so I got out of bed, put on a dressing gown and went downstairs.
Could you say what time that was?
Shortly after 3.
So, did you answer the door?
I opened it on the chain, but when I saw it was Wendy, I let her in and took her upstairs.
By Wendy, you are referring, are you, to the accused, Mrs. Grant?
Yes.
Was Mrs. Grant alone?
No, she had Anna with her in a carry-cot.
Anna being her daughter, a baby of 3 months, correct?
Yes.
How long was it since you had seen Mrs. Grant?
4 months or more.
So you invited her into your flat, did you?
Yes, she seemed rather distraught, so I made some tea and we sat in the living room. Then Frank joined us, and she did seem to calm down after a while. We talked for about an hour or more.
Where was Anna during this hour of conversation?
Asleep in a carry-cot, mostly. Eventually, Wendy left with Anna, as I understood it, to go back home. At the front door, I said, "Where are the wheels?" meaning the wheels to the carry-cot. Well, she said she'd left them by the gate. Well, I said goodnight, she said goodnight, and went towards the gate with the carry-cot. I closed the door, and that was that.
What principally did the three of you talk about on that evening?
About Anna. Wendy said she'd been having a trying time of it at home. Her husband, Des, had gone off the rails, some sort of drinking problem, I gathered. And she was stuck in the house all day with the 2 children, Jamie, a boy of 3, and Anna, who needed night and day looking after. It finally got her down, I suppose, so she was turning to us for help.
Why did Mrs. Grant look to you and your husband for assistance?
Because she thought Frank was Anna's father.
Did you, Mrs. Breakspears, believe this to be the case?
I neither believed it nor disbelieved it.
What kind of help did Mrs. Grant ask for?
No, she didn't ask, she demanded. Demanded that we took Anna there and then to bring up as our own child.
How did you respond to this demand?
Well, as I say, we talked. We listened. Mainly listened. I thought it would help if she got it off her chest, but of course there was no question of us taking Anna. I also pointed out, perhaps too firmly, that she'd been irresponsible to bring Anna out on a cold February night. She looked awfully pale to me.
When at last you said goodnight to Mrs. Grant at your front door, did you have the impression that she had got it off her chest?
I imagine so.
After you had closed the door, what did you do?
I went back to bed and fell asleep. The next I knew, there was this commotion in the living room, and I thought, oh, Lord, she's back again.
Meaning the accused?
Yes. It was 6:30. I looked at the clock. Well, I went into the living room, and Frank was there with a policewoman who was holding Anna in her arms. She said she'd found her outside on the path in a carry-cot.
In what condition was the baby?
Oh, terrible. Her lips were blue, even her tongue was blue. I thought she was dead. But the policewoman shouted, "Get some blankets, quick." So I flew into the bedroom and grabbed the duvet off the bed, and we wrapped her up in it and took in turns to cuddle her, the policewoman and me, while we waited for the ambulance. Well, I don't know what else we could have done, really.
Go on, please.
Well, little Anna started gasping. She was in my arms like this. And suddenly she had a kind of convulsion and stopped breathing. Well, the policewoman snatched her and put her on the ground and gave her the kiss of life. She was marvellous, but that was no good.
Did Anna, in fact, revive?
No.
Later, did you learn that Anna was pronounced dead on arrival at Fulchester General Hospital?
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Breakspears. Wait there, if you will.
Mrs. Forrest?
My lad. Mrs. Breakspears, you and your husband were married 16 years ago, when you were 20 and he was 28. Are all these details correct?
Yes.
We have learned from counsel for the Crown that you and your husband now live apart, and indeed you have lately commenced divorce proceedings against him, have you not?
Yes.
When you first married, did you plan to have children?
Yes, we did, but we were unlucky.
In 1978, after 11 years of marriage, did you and Frank Breakspears attend a fertility clinic which had recently opened at Fulchester General Hospital?
Yes.
After several months of tests, did you have an interview with the consultant gynecologist at that hospital?
Yes, a Mr. Peterman.
Very briefly, Mrs. Breakspears, what did he tell you on that occasion?
He said I had a rare condition which meant I could never have children. There was an operation, but there was only a 50-50 chance of it succeeding, and in view of my age and so on, he advised against it.
How did you both react to this news?
Well, I was disappointed, of course, but over the years, I come to suspect that something wasn't, well, quite right, shall we put it that way. But Frank, well, he took it hard. He said afterwards, it's worse than hearing your own death sentence.
In the next 2 years, you and Mr. Breakspears contacted a large number of adoption agencies, did you not, with a view to adopting a baby?
Yes.
But again, you met with no success.
No, none at all.
Then in 1981, did you and your husband devise a more unorthodox plan whereby you could get a baby?
Well, it was Frank's idea, really, but I agreed to help, yes.
Will you tell his lordship and the jury what this plan was?
We decided to try and find someone, a married woman preferably, who would be willing to have Frank's child and then give it to us to bring up as our own.
By what method did you envisage this woman should conceive your husband's child?
By artificial insemination.
And would she receive payment for her services?
Oh, yes, of course.
In July 1981, you both made approaches to a married couple, Desmond Grant and the accused, Wendy Grant.
Yes, we did.
Were you acquainted with this couple?
Not Wendy, no, but we both knew Des. He was a regular at the coach house.
Indeed, you were aware, were you not, that Mr. Grant had a drink problem and was at the time in considerable financial difficulties?
I didn't realise at the time he had a problem with drink, no. And as for his finances, well, he may have talked to Frank about them, but he certainly never mentioned them to me.
At first, the Grant showed the greatest reluctance to fall in with your proposal, but you persisted until in the end you'd got them to agree.
No, that's nonsense. They were taken with the idea almost from the beginning. It was only the details we discussed after that.
On another occasion, you visited the Grants at their home and met their first child, Jamie. Do you recall saying, if ours is a sweetie like him, you can have anything, just name your price?
No, I don't recall it because I never said it.
In November 1981, the four of you went to see a solicitor, a Mr. Anthony Mallard, and in his office you all signed a contract which he had drafted, did you not?
Yes, we did.
May the witness be shown the document. Will you turn to page 10, the final page of the contract, Mrs. Breakspears? My lad, may I direct your attention to page 10 of the jury's bundle? May this be Exhibit 1, my lad. Mrs. Breakspears, is one of those signatures yours?
Yes, the fourth one.
Now, the essence of this long and elaborate document is simply this, that Mrs. Grant was to be paid £500 on signing the contract and a further £1,000 if she conceived your husband's child. After the birth of the child, he or she would be given to the father, that is to say, your husband, in return for a final instalment of £5,000, making a total of £6,500 in all. You furthermore agreed to accept the child, even if by any mischance it was not a normal, healthy baby. Is that an accurate summary of the contract you signed, Mrs. Breakspears?
Yes. Yes, I think so.
Against whose account was the money to be drawn? Yours or Mr. Breakspears?
On mine. Frank had very little in the way of savings.
One moment, please. Mrs. Breakspears, I find myself somewhat perplexed by this document, described by learned counsel as a contract. Perhaps the jury are similarly puzzled by it. In form and appearance, it certainly resembles a contract. I take it you and the other party signed the document in the presence of the solicitor, this, Mr. Mallard.
Yes, my lord, we did.
And did he convey to you all an impression that you were signing was indeed a contract, an agreement which was to be legally binding and which the courts would enforce if the need arose?
He said we should look upon it as a solemn agreement we should each try to carry out to the best of our ability. But he did warn us that the legal position was doubtful.
Doubtful, Mrs. Breakspears? On the contrary, to my mind, the legal position could hardly be more free from doubt. No English court would look with anything other than the gravest displeasure on an agreement, however solemn, by which babies are bought and sold like cattle.
My lord, I'm sorry. I love my husband, and yet I made him unhappy. Well, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't anybody's fault, and yet I felt responsible. And nobody knows what it's like, the torment of knowing you can give your husband everything except the one thing he really wants. I'm not being disrespectful, but if you were in my position, you'd have done the same thing.
So
It had agreed evidence, members of the jury, that Anna Grant was born at Fulchester General Hospital on November the 7th, 1982. A congenital malformation of the heart was diagnosed, Fallot's tetralogy, and an emergency operation was performed on the following day. When did you first hear she was not the healthy child you and your husband anticipated, Mrs. Breakspears?
On the Monday, Des, Mr. Grant, phoned and told us. I just went numb.
2 days later, you and Mr. Breakspears drove to the hospital, did you not, where you were met by Mr. Grant?
Yes.
You planned to visit the intensive care unit first, and then to deliver flowers to Mrs. Grant, is that right?
Something like that.
And though you called in at the unit to see Anna, you never did deliver the flowers, did you, Mrs. Breakspears?
No.
Why was that?
I was too upset. Little Anna, she was on a ventilator. There were all these tubes, wires everywhere. To her head, on her chest. Nearby there was a machine with a blip to show her heartbeat. I thought any second that's going to stop. And then
you turned and ran, didn't you? Didn't you, Mrs. Breakspears?
Yes.
Your husband later found you sitting in your car outside the hospital crying, did he not?
Yes.
And it was then, wasn't it, you told him, that on no account would you accept the baby or pay the agreed £5,000 to the Grants?
I don't remember, then or later.
For his part, Mr. Breakspears made it clear he wished you both to accept Anna. Is that correct?
Yes, but I couldn't.
I put it to you, Mrs. Breakspears, that your rejection of Anna makes a nonsense of your assertion to his lordship that you were prepared to go to any lengths to ensure your husband's happiness.
No!
And that your attitude throughout this whole distressing episode was one of selfishness and callous irresponsibility.
Taking Anna wouldn't have made him happy. It would have destroyed us. It has destroyed us.
In November 1982, did you have enough money in your bank account to pay the agreed £5,000 to the Grants?
Yes, of course.
But by January 1983, you had very little left in that same account, didn't you?
No, that's right. In the December, I bought the lease of the shop next door to mine.
This shop now forms part of the premises occupied by your salon, Snips. Is that so?
Yes.
And by a coincidence, the premium you paid for the lease was £5,000.
What if it was?
When had this shop fallen vacant?
I hope you're not implying that I planned all this beforehand. That's a disgusting idea.
I ask you again, Mrs. Breakspears, when did the shop next door to your own fall vacant?
August, July, August, sometime round then.
In other words, when Mrs. Grant was pregnant.
Yes.
And you dismiss, do you, the proposition that Anna's disability was merely a convenient pretext to do what you intended to do anyway, namely, to reject her.
With all the breath in my body.
The fact remains, does it not, that between November 1982 and February 1983, you failed to respond to Wendy Grant's repeated attempts to contact you, replacing the receiver when she telephoned, returning her letters?
Yes, I did. It would have been cruel to hold out any hope that I might relent and take Anna after all.
No, Mrs. Breakspear. When Mrs. Grant called at the coach house on the night in question, she was, you say, in a state of great agitation.
Yes.
And when you opened the door on the chain, you at first refused to admit her, didn't you?
No, not refused. I asked if she might call back at a more civilized hour, certainly. I'd had a long, hard week.
So, far from listening patiently to what she had to say, your manner was rancorous and hostile from first to last, was it not?
No.
And when your husband took sides with Mrs. Grant and begged you to allow Anna to stay, you became almost incoherent with anger.
Oh, rubbish.
Then can you explain why, when Mrs. Grant was found by the police, her shirt was torn and her cheek was bruised?
No.
But it was you who tore her shirt, wasn't it? And it was you who struck her with your clenched fist. Isn't that right, Mrs. Breakspear?
No, I'm sorry, it's not right. At some point, Wendy threw her mug of tea at the living room window, which shattered. She went to pick up something else. Well, I had to restrain her. It may have been at that point that her shirt was torn, as you say, but I never struck her, never.
And soon afterwards, you ejected Mrs. Grant with force and slammed the door in her face.
No, I didn't. I helped her downstairs with a carry cot.
Do you recall that when Mrs. Grant reached your front door, not, I suggest, in any calmer frame of mind, but more overwrought than ever, she told you she would abandon Anna on your doorstep and the responsibility would lie on your shoulders?
Well, she may have come out with some such nonsense, but I could hardly be expected to believe it.
So then, after a scene which had gone on for more than an hour, where voices had been raised and crockery had been smashed, a window broken, you simply went back to bed and fell asleep?
Yes, that's exactly what I did.
No, Mrs. Breakspear, I suggest you were not asleep, but awake, when 5 minutes later the doorbell rang again.
Oh, did it? Well, I didn't hear it.
You went downstairs and, I suggest, opened the door, where you discovered the carry cot with Anna inside it on the path beyond the porch.
What?
You briefly examined Anna before going back indoors, leaving her where you found her. And when Mr. Breakspear later asked you what Mrs. Grant had wanted, you said, "Oh, just £1 for the taxi."
That is a wicked lie!
Thank you, Mrs. Breakspear. I've no further questions, my lad.
On which floor of this building, Miss Simpson, is your own particular senior citizen's flat?
The first floor. Actually, it's a flat-let. A bedsitter, really, but very nice, I've no complaints.
What does your rear window overlook?
The pub garden.
The garden of the coach house.
That's right, son.
I'd like you to tell his lordship and the jury about certain events which you witnessed in the early hours of Saturday, February the 20th of last year. Were you at home on that date?
Yes, I was in bed, not asleep. Resting my eyes, listening to my transistor. You doze off during the day and then you can't sleep at night, can you?
And as you lay there, did you hear something which caused you to get up and cross to your window?
Oh, I'd say, nearly jumped out of my skin, let alone my bed. Well, you don't expect it, do you?
What had you heard, Miss Simpson?
Breaking glass. Pane of glass for the sound of it.
Did you ascertain which pane of glass had been broken?
Yes, Mr. Breakspear was at his window taking out this big piece of glass. It was easy to see because the lights were on in their living room. Yvonne, Mrs. Breakspear, was there, and another woman with dark hair.
Is that person in court today?
Hang on, get my specs out. Yes. Yes, that could be her.
My lord, identity is not in issue here. The third person was indeed the accused, Wendy Grant. Now, Miss Simpson, after the pane was broken, did you hear the occupants of the flat in conversation?
When I tell about conversation, that's the last thing I should call it. All three of them at it, hammer and tongs, shouting, screaming. I opened my own window to get a better listen. I couldn't make head or tail of it.
Then later, did the accused leave the coach house?
Yes, Yvonne saw her off at the front door. They said something to each other, I don't know what, but it didn't sound much in the spirit of Christian charity, I can assure you.
Was she carrying anything?
Yes, it seemed to be a bag with handles. Yvonne shut the door, But a few minutes later, she was back again, this dark-haired one. She walked up and down for a bit. Into the garden, out of it. Most peculiar it was. In the end, she left the bag on the path below the porch and ran off.
She ran? You're quite certain of that, are you?
Yes.
Then did you remain at your window?
Yes, for 20 minutes or more.
During that time, did anyone come or go?
Not a soul.
Did either Mr. Breakspear or his wife open their front door while you kept watch?
No, and it got so cold, I went back to bed.
Thank you, Miss Simpson. No. Will you wait there, please?
Well, I've told you all I know.
Counsel for the defense wishes to ask you a few more questions.
Oh, very well. Your lordship.
I'll not detain you for long, Miss Simpson.
Don't worry, dear, I'm fine.
Now, it's about 30 yards, is it not, from the rear window of your flatlet to the Breakspears' front door opposite?
Well, 30 yards. Sounds about right.
Close enough for you to see Mrs. Grant carrying something bulky, say a bag with handles, but not close enough for you to realise it was a carry-cot.
True.
The woman, you say, had dark hair. But even with your spectacles, you could not positively identify Mrs. Grant as being the woman you saw that night, could you?
No, dear, no.
Were you wearing spectacles as you sat by the window?
No, but I can see well enough without them. Thank God.
In view of the fact that it was not only dark, but foggy, Miss Simpson, the jury may wonder how you managed to see any movement on the path at all. How was this possible?
Well, that's easy. You see, the upstairs lights were on, and the light in the hall, too. Now, their door has a glass panel in it. And whether the door's open or shut, so long as the hall light's on, there's always some light on the path, too.
And conversely, if there are no lights on within the Breakspears' living quarters, the path is in darkness?
Right, you've got it.
So when the young woman returned some 5 minutes later and behaved as you described, pacing along the path and into the garden, this was visible because the hall light was on, correct?
And the lights upstairs, too.
When Mrs. Grant left the carry-cot on the path beyond the porch, did you notice if she appeared to bend over it, to perhaps make certain adjustments to it?
Well, I can't say for certain. If she did, it wasn't for long.
You then remained at your window for a while. Did the Breakspears' lights remain on, or did they go off?
They went off soon after the woman left.
So now, as we established earlier, the path was in total darkness, wasn't it?
Yes.
And if Mrs. Grant, or anyone else for that matter, had returned during the 20 minutes you kept watch, you wouldn't have seen them, would you?
Yes, but the lights would have come on again, surely.
Failing that, however, you would not have observed the arrival of any visitor, would you?
Well, no.
Right. Thank you, Miss Simpson.
Mr. Barrett, do you wish to re-examine?
Indeed, yes, my lord, if I might just take instructions. One final question, Miss Simpson. During your 20-minute vigil, did any light come on either in the Breakspears' flat or in the front hall of the Breakspears' flat?
No, it didn't.
You're sure of that?
Sure as sure.
Thank you.
You may now leave the witness box, Miss Simpson. I think this is a convenient moment to adjourn proceedings for the day.
All stand.
The cases in Fulchester Crown Court are fictitious, but the jury is composed of members of the general public.
I call Evelyn Elizabeth Trenchard.
The case you're about to see is a fictional one, but the procedure is authentic. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public. A 3-month-old baby, Anna Grant, has died of exposure, and her mother, Wendy Grant, is accused of murdering her. Yesterday, it was revealed that a childless couple, Yvonne Breakspears and her husband, Frank, had paid Wendy money to be the surrogate mother of Frank's child. But when Anna was born, the couple rejected her. The case is now in its second day.
At approximately 6:15 a.m. on Saturday, February the 20th of last year, where were you, Constable Trenchard?
I was on foot patrol, my lord, in the Oakwood Park area of Fulchester.
Did your beat include Wellington Road and in particular a public house, the Coach House?
Yes, sir.
Were you acquainted with the persons who managed this public house?
Mr. and Mrs. Breakspears. Yes, I knew them slightly.
As you passed the Coach House on the morning in question, did you see or hear anything which aroused your suspicions?
Yes, I heard a noise which seemed to come from their garden, but it was too faint to identify.
Did you then enter the garden?
Through the gate, yes. I shone my torch round, but there was nothing to see. Then I made my way to the door of the Breakspears flat. They live over the pub. It was then I found where the noise came from.
And what, in fact, was its source?
There was a carry cot lying on the path with a baby inside, a baby of about 3 months.
What was the exact position of the carry cot in relation to the front door of the Breakspears flat?
May I refer to my notebook, my lord? The notes were made an hour after the incident.
Very well.
There's a porch immediately in front of the door, then some steps lead from the porch to the path. The carry cot had been left there, like I said, at the bottom of the steps.
Directly opposite the door?
No, to one side.
If someone had opened the door, how much of the carry cot would have been visible to them?
Less than half, perhaps a third.
Now, bearing in mind that the night was dark, if someone had briefly opened the door, would it have been possible or impossible for them to overlook the presence of the carry cot, in your opinion?
Milad, my learned friend is leading the officer into the realm of idle speculation.
Yes, as far as I agree with you. Miss Trenchard has said that less than half the cot was visible. It will be for the jury to draw some appropriate conclusion from the officer's observations, will it not?
Of course, my lord. If the carry cot had been placed not on the path but within the porch, would it have afforded the baby, in your opinion, some degree of protection?
A much greater degree of protection, yes. And that's hardly a matter of opinion.
Why do you say that, officer?
Because there was a lot of frost on the path, but hardly any on the porch.
What protection from the elements did the baby have in the way of clothing, bedding, and so on?
Next to nothing. A thin woolen nightdress and a nappy. There was a waterproof cover lying on the ground beside the carry cot. A blanket half in the cot and half out of it, and a shawl. No head covering whatsoever. Even the carry cot hood was down.
Did you then examine
First of all, was the cot on pram wheels at this stage, or was it simply lying on the ground?
It was on the ground, my lord.
I'm grateful to you, my lord. In fact, there is no dispute about this. The carry cot wheels were discovered by the police later that day, some 400 yards from the public house, where they had been folded up and pushed into a hedge.
That's correct.
Thank you, Constable. Yes, Mr. Marriott.
Did you then examine the baby?
Briefly, yes. Her skin was very drawn and she was, I suppose you'd say, ash grey in colour. She breathed with great difficulty.
Was there anything in particular about the cot or its contents which provided any indication of how long the baby had been left outside?
Her blanket and shawl were both coated in thick white frost. I'd say she'd been there for at least an hour, and possibly far longer.
Constable Trenchard, do you agree that at the time Anna was left outside the Breakspears door, namely 4:15 a.m., the weather conditions may have been somewhat different from the ones you encountered 2 hours later?
Sorry, but I can't agree with that. It must have been frosty at least around about 4 a.m, and as I said earlier, the porch was free of frost.
During the 2 hours Anna remained in her carry cot, is it not entirely possible that she herself kicked off her waterproof cover and blanket?
Possible, yes, but I hardly...
Similarly, you observed that the carry cot hood was down, but you failed to mention that the metal arms which supported the hood were defective.
They were defective, yes.
So might not some inadvertent movement on the child's part have caused the hood to fall?
I doubt that very much. A healthy baby could have done these things, but Anna wasn't healthy, was she? When I picked her up, there was no strength in her.
Well, naturally, officer. At 6:15 a.m., she was suffering the effects of exposure, wasn't she?
Yes, but even...
Were the blanket, the shawl, and the waterproof cover of sufficient thickness to provide enough protection for, say, 10 minutes in the open air?
For 10 minutes, maybe.
Moreover, she had been placed within earshot both of the upstairs flat and of a chance passer-by. or indeed a vigilant police constable on foot patrol.
Certainly, but it was still pure chance I found her.
In view of all these factors, then, if Mrs. Grant's intention had been to expose Anna in that particular location, why did she not, well, to put the matter simply, carry her to the far end of the garden and leave her to die with no means of protection whatsoever?
That's not for me to say, madam. You can't read the mind of a desperate woman.
My lord, I object to that question.
Yes, yes. Mrs. Forrest, hypothetical questions are no more appropriate in a cross-examination than they are in an examination in chief, are they?
No, my lad. I apologise. Finally, Constable Trenchard, I'd like to ask you about an incident which took place later at the Breakspears flat. Did Mr. Breakspear tell you he was Anna's father?
Yes, he did.
And that Mrs. Grant had called by earlier?
Yes.
Shortly after Anna ceased to breathe and was apparently dead, didn't Mr. Breakspear turn to his wife and say, "We did this, we're as guilty as her"?
He may have said something of the kind, yes.
Did you ask him what he meant by this remark?
No, at that moment I was still too busy trying to revive the baby. I imagined he was talking about Anna's birth, not about anything that had happened during the night.
Nevertheless, officer, Mrs. Breakspear reacted to the remark by becoming almost hysterical, did she not?
I can't remember. It was a distressing moment for everybody.
I see. 7:26. What did you do on receiving the information, Detective Sergeant?
I and Detective Constable Wilmot made our way by car to Ellen Street, my lord. PC Openshaw was waiting for us on the corner of Ellen Street and Smyrna Road, and he escorted us to the bus shelter where the suspect had been sleeping.
What time was this?
07:30.
Had she been waiting for a bus, Mr. Harris?
Seemingly not, my lord, no. She had a nasty bruise on her left cheek, but she was otherwise unharmed.
Did you arrest the accused?
Yes, and delivered a caution.
Did she say anything?
No. We drove Mrs. Grant to the station. I asked her if she was hungry. She said she was. And after she'd had breakfast, I joined her in the interview room at around 9 o'clock.
During the period between her arrest and subsequent interview, how did the accused behave?
Well, she was very quiet, passive.
How long did the interview last?
Approximately 2 hours until 11 o'clock.
And what emerged in the course of these 2 hours?
Well, she started by denying any involvement in Anna's death, said that someone had stolen the baby in the middle of the night and she'd gone to look for it. She carried on in this vein for a while, and she burst into tears. After she'd regained her composure, I carried on asking questions, and gradually another story emerged. She said, "I left the coach house at about 4 and began pushing the caddy cot and Anna back home." And then she added, "But I just boiled over." I asked her what she meant by this, and she said, "I felt angry, furious with Yvonne, Mrs. Breakspear, that is, for the way she'd treated me. I went back to the coach house, took the cot off its wheels, and went down the path. Then she placed the cot where it was later found by WPC Trenchard and set off."
Did she say she rang the doorbell or otherwise alerted the Breakspears to the presence of the carry cot either then or later?
No, she did not.
Did she acknowledge that she was placing Anna in grave physical danger?
Indeed, yes. I said, "Did you want Anna to die?" And she replied, "I knew she'd probably die. Yes, I knew she wouldn't be found till the morning." And then she added, "I wanted them to be blamed for it. I wanted to drag them down like they dragged me down."
What did you understand by that?
I believe she may have entertained a muddled notion of implicating Mr. and Mrs. Breakspear in the crime. She said, "They were to blame. I knew that. Morally to blame, I mean."
Did you ask the accused what she did after leaving Anna outside the coach house?
I did, yes. She remembered pushing the carrycot wheels into a hedge not far from the pub, and then she said, "I got lost in the fog. I was panic-stricken. I had no idea where I was." I asked her, "Can you remember finding the bus shelter?" And she replied, "No, not at all. I must have blacked out, I suppose. I can't recall anything of that."
At the conclusion of your interview with the accused, did you ask her something in particular?
Yes, I suggested that she might be prepared to make a full written statement.
How did she respond?
Well, she agreed to do so. However, just as I was getting the papers out, she began to complain of feeling hot. This is rather odd, because earlier on she'd been shivering. Anyway, she stood up and just keeled over.
She fainted?
Yes. We thought perhaps the bruise on her cheek was more serious than we'd imagined, so it seemed advisable to take her to the hospital for an X-ray.
To which hospital did you take her?
Fulchester General, my lord. There was nothing on the X-ray, but she was a little dazed, so they decided to keep her in overnight.
The following day, what did you learn?
Well, apparently she'd either realized or been told that Anna's body was still at the General. When they refused to allow her to see the baby, she just smashed up half the ward. So the hospital authorities decided to move her in the middle of the night under deep sedation to another hospital, Abbott's Cross Mental Hospital, my lord.
When did you next visit the accused?
On March the 5th, shortly after she'd emerged from the sedation. But by this time, she'd changed her story again and denied all responsibility for Anna's death. So we never did get our written statement.
Detective Sergeant Harris, you have told us that on your instructions, Detective Constable Wilmot refrained from taking notes during your interrogation of Mrs. Grant.
That's correct.
Did you yourself take notes during the interview?
No.
Will you remind the jury, at what time then did you manage to make a written record of what had taken place?
At around 3 p.m. that afternoon.
3 o'clock, Detective Sergeant. Some 4 hours later.
Yes. As I testified earlier, I recorded all the main points, and then Wilmot supplemented them with 1 or 2 items he'd remembered which I'd forgotten. If I could just explain, my lord, the record was in no way a verbatim report. At the time, I didn't believe that to be necessary.
So when you quote Mrs. Grant as saying, for example, I wanted them to be blamed for it, I wanted to drag them down like they dragged me down, this is not a quotation, is it, but more an approximate paraphrase of what she may have said some 4 or 5 hours earlier.
I believe it to be pretty accurate, my lord.
Can you accurately reproduce, word for word, counsel for the Crown's last question to you?
Well, that's hardly a fair comparison now, is it?
Can you, officer?
No.
Can you remember the general sense of what he asked you not 5 minutes ago?
No.
No. More serious than the errors which I'm suggesting you made in your record are the omissions. A full transcript of those 2 hours of interrogation would occupy a document of considerable bulk, would it not?
Yes, but it would hardly be more helpful, I believe, than a summary of an interview conducted by an experienced police officer, if I may say so, my lord, and then written down while it was still fresh in his memory.
The memory, Detective Sergeant, is a notoriously selective organ, and what you later noted down, accurately or otherwise, were only those matters which appeared to confirm what you from the outset believed, namely that Mrs. Grant had caused and was responsible for her daughter's death. Is that not the fact of the matter?
No, not at all. I merely wanted to get at the truth.
You did believe she was responsible, though, didn't you, even before the interview began?
Well, I suspected something of the sort, yes, obviously.
Now, at the time you arrested the defendant, did it strike you as strange that someone who had, as you believed, lately abandoned her daughter in such a manner as to cause her death should be found asleep in a bus shelter?
Strange?
Yes.
I'm afraid I didn't give it much thought.
Did you tell Mrs. Grant why you were arresting her?
Well, yes, obviously. I said it was in connection with Anna's death.
Now, presumably, this was the first she had heard of her daughter's death.
Yes, I think we can assume that.
And she remained silent.
That's right.
Did she respond in any way to the news?
No, her face showed no emotion I can recall.
How about in the police car? Did she react then?
No. No, as a matter of fact, she dozed off.
Fell asleep again, officer.
That's right.
You say she was shivering. Was it cold?
No, it was normal room temperature.
But at 11 o'clock, she complained of feeling hot, then fainted.
That's right, my lord.
Did it ever cross your mind, officer, that Mrs. Grant was not simply, as you stated earlier, quiet and passive, but in a state of severe traumatic shock?
She may well have been shocked, yes. But not so shocked she couldn't eat a breakfast of bacon and eggs. If you're implying she was in no fit state to be interviewed, I'd reject that totally.
Indeed, Detective Sergeant, that's exactly what I do suggest. For later, as you've told the court, she was admitted to Fulchester General Hospital for observation and later still suffered a full-blown nervous breakdown. Has it not occurred to you that at the time of the interrogation, Mrs. Grant may not have understood your questions or indeed what she herself was saying?
She was not mentally ill, not then.
Are you aware of cases where people under emotional stress have confessed to crimes they did not commit?
There have been such cases, yes.
Detective Sergeant, have you direct knowledge of such a case?
My lord, I object. The question is totally irrelevant to the present case.
Mr. Harris, have you any reason to suppose that in the latter part of your interview with the accused, she was not telling the truth?
No, my lord. And I'd just add this, if I may. While I interviewed Wendy, I was most impressed with her straightforward and lucid replies. She seemed most clear-headed to me at the time.
Yes, thank you. Mrs. Forrest, I cannot allow you to put your question. It is for the jury, not Mr. Harris, to decide whether Mrs. Grant's statements were true.
As your lordship pleases. Finally, Detective Sergeant, when you encountered Mrs. Grant on March the 5th at Abbott's Cross Mental Hospital, did she display any glimmer of recognition when she saw you?
No. No, I have to confess she didn't.
I call Wendy Grant.
Take the book in your right hand and read the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God, the evidence I give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Your full name and address, please.
Wendy Grant, 23 Driffield Road, Fulchester.
Now, Mrs. Grant, raise your voice as much as you can and direct your answers not to me, but to the jury over there. You were born in Nottingham and you are 31 years old, is that right?
Yes.
After gaining diplomas in textile design and education, you took up a position as an art teacher at Oakwood Comprehensive School here in Fulchester, did you not?
That's right.
In 1978, did you resign from this post?
Yes.
Yes, go on.
I'd got married and was going to have a baby.
Your husband being Desmond Grant, a teacher at the same school?
Yes.
Was it your intention to continue employment after the baby was born?
No. I didn't want to be a part-time mother.
So you took your future role seriously?
Yes, very.
Was your pregnancy an easy one?
It was marvellous. And the birth, too. I was lucky.
The baby was a healthy boy whom you named Jamie, is that right?
Jamie, yes. He's 4 now.
How about the period following the birth? Was it a troubled time, a happy time?
It was happy. For me and Des. For all of us.
When did you first meet Frank Breakspears and his wife?
3 years ago, in 1981. We had supper together. I didn't know them at all, but Des sometimes drank in their pub.
What did they tell you when you met for supper?
They told us about themselves. They asked a lot of questions about Jamie. I showed them a snapshot. And then Yvonne said that she'd had awful problems trying to have a baby and how lonely they were. Then she asked if I knew what a surrogate mother was. And I said, yes, I read something about it in the paper. And then she said, will you be ours? Will you have Frank's child? I've got lots of money. I can pay you anything you like.
Did she seem embarrassed putting this proposition to you?
Not in the least.
Well, what was your response to her unusual request?
I was surprised, of course. Flattered, too. I kept thinking, well, why me?
Were you horrified or outraged by her suggestion?
No. I felt sorry for them, mostly.
Did you agree to the Breakspears plan?
Not at first, no. Naturally, I thought about it, and I talked it over with Des. I tried to imagine what it'd be like if a doctor said to me I couldn't have a baby. If Jamie had never been born, I'd be miserable. So the next time we met, I said, yes, okay, but I don't want any money. I'll do it for nothing. And Yvonne wouldn't hear of that. She was afraid I might be tempted to keep the baby. Well, we then realised there were all sorts of snags. That's why we got a solicitor.
What were your feelings when in 1982 it was confirmed that you were pregnant?
I was thrilled. That may seem strange to some people, carrying a child that belongs to another woman's husband, but I'd done nothing wrong. I hadn't been to bed with Frank or anything. I felt honoured, that's the word, to be bringing them a new life they'd despaired of.
So by the beginning of February 1983, when Anna had recovered from her operation and had been home with you for 6 weeks, you were deeply depressed and exhausted, were you?
Yes. Nothing seemed to be going right. The roof over the children's bedroom leaked and we couldn't afford to get it mended. Des was unhappy. He was going out drinking every night. Oh, and his mother was living with us as well. That was a disaster.
On February 17th, 3 days before your visit to the Breakspears. Did a particular incident take place?
Yes. I was too tired to deal with Jamie. He started getting very jealous and throwing tantrums. And so that morning, my mother-in-law picked him up and spanked him. We had a flaming row, and later she packed her bags and caught the train back to Scotland. Des wouldn't speak to me after that. I thought our marriage was over. And as if that wasn't enough, Anna came down with a cold, and so for the next 2 nights I had hardly any sleep at all. Well, by the Friday night, Anna was a lot better. But I was so tired, I couldn't sleep. I kept on thinking about the Breakspears, how there they were sitting pretty, and my life was in a shambles, and all because of them. So I thought, right, they wanted a baby, now they're going to get a baby. Let's see how well they cope. Stupid, really, but I was past thinking straight by then. So I got dressed, I put Anna in the carry-cot and set off towards the coach house.
When you arrived, what was Yvonne Breakspears' manner toward you?
Very nasty, very cold. First of all, she wouldn't let me in, and then she threatened to call the police. And then Frank came in, and the next thing was that poor Frank sided with me. He said he would take Anna. He'd wanted to all along, actually. But when he said it again, Yvonne really let him have it.
Did you throw a mug of tea at the window?
Yes. That was when Yvonne slapped my face.
And did she use physical force to eject you?
Yes, I'll say.
What did you tell her as she did so?
That I'd leave Anna outside, and she'd be her responsibility.
Did you carry out your threat?
Not at first, no. I set off towards home, and then I thought, no, she's not going to get away with this. So I went back, took the cot off the wheels and put Anna in front of their door. Their lights were on, so I went to the gate and hung around to see what happened. After a few minutes, their lights went off, so I realised that I'd have to ring their doorbell if I wanted Frank or Yvonne to come to the door.
Did you ring?
Yes, several times. Eventually I heard footsteps, so I went to the gate and waited.
Did any lights come on?
No, but I was near enough to see that it was Yvonne. She came out, saw the carry-cot, and then she bent over and said, "That bloody, bloody woman, now look what she's done."
Did she say this to anybody or to herself?
I don't know. I assumed it was to herself because she said it so softly. And then she stood up and looked towards the gate where I was hiding. Obviously she knew I couldn't be far away. So I took the wheels and I ran off down the road. I remember I pushed the wheels into a hedge. I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't leave them behind. And then I got lost. It was very foggy.
As you ran away, did you have any fears you might have left Anna in any danger?
Of course not. Not after Yvonne had seen her.
Mrs. Grant, did you suspect that your actions would cause any kind of physical harm to your daughter?
Never. Never. How could I? Yvonne was there, beside her.
The case you're about to see is fictional, but the procedure is authentic. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public, and they will retire at the end of the trial to reach their own unrehearsed verdict. A young baby, Anna Grant, has died of exposure, and her mother, Wendy Grant, is accused of murdering her.
All stand.
Yesterday, Mrs. Grant confirmed that a childless couple, Frank and Yvonne Breakspear, had paid her money to be a surrogate mother, but had then rejected the baby when she was born with a defective heart. Today, Wendy Grant is about to conclude giving evidence.
Mrs. Grant, may I remind you that you are still on oath? Thank you, Mrs. Forrest.
My lad. Mrs. Grant, you said yesterday that you retired to the gate and watched as Mrs. Breakspears opened her front door. She came out of the porch, went down the steps to the path and bent over Anna as she lay in her carry-cot. Then, realising she might at any moment come to check whether you were still in the vicinity, you then ran off. Have I summarised your evidence fairly?
That's right.
Were there any doubts in your mind as to whether Mrs. Breakspears would take Anna indoors?
No, of course not.
You have not denied leaving Anna on the path for a while, but did you intend to cause her any harm during that time?
No.
When you ran off, did you go in any particular direction?
Yes, towards home. But I was frightened in case Yvonne was following me, so I went down a side street. And that's the last I can remember. I suppose I must have panicked, blacked out or something.
Did you return home at some point?
I may have done. I'm afraid I've no idea.
Can you recall the bus shelter in Ellen Street or the policeman waking you?
No. I've never been to Ellen Street in my life. I don't know where it is.
Do you recall being interrogated at the police station or fainting and being taken to hospital?
No.
What, in fact, is your first memory, subsequent to leaving the Breakspears and turning down the side street?
Sitting up in a hospital bed being fed tomato soup. The sun was very bright on the windows, and I thought, that's funny, it's supposed to be the middle of winter.
Later, did you learn where you were and what date it was?
Yes. It was March the 2nd, they told me that, and I was in hospital, Abbott's Cross, and they said I'd been under deep sedation for about 10 days. Well, then I asked for Anna, and they said, sorry, that's not possible. So I racked my brains as to why, and then it came to me, of course, that I'd left her with Yvonne. So I said, can I phone Mrs. Breakspears? She's looking after Anna. And still they said, no, no. And I asked why, and they said, because she's dead. And then, a few days later, the detective came. The one who spoke yesterday, Mr. Harris. And he asked if I was prepared to make a written confession. I said, confession? Confess to what? What am I supposed to have done? And he said, why, murdered Anna, like you told us the other week. And I said, you'll have to excuse me, but I've never seen you in my life before.
You had no recollection of meeting Mr. Harris earlier or of confessing to Anna's murder?
No. And naturally, I refused to dictate a confession because I knew I hadn't murdered her. It was a ridiculous thing to say.
How long did you remain a patient at Abbott's Cross Mental Hospital?
6 months altogether.
For what illness were you treated?
Depression.
Do you regard yourself as cured, Mrs. Grant?
Yes. Partly. As much as I can be with all this hanging over me.
Thank you, Mrs. Grant.
Mr. Marriott?
Mrs. Grant, am I right in saying that you do not deny that Detective Sergeant Harris questioned you for 2 hours on the morning of Saturday, February the 20th of last year?
I can't affirm or deny it, can I?
And can I take it that you also do not deny admitting to him at that time that your intention in leaving Anna outside the Breakspears' front door was to cause her death or serious injury?
If that's what they say I said, I suppose I did.
Have you any idea why you might have made such serious admissions if they were not true?
No, but they weren't true, I'm sure of that. Perhaps
Go on, Mrs. Grant.
I wanted to punish myself for bringing Anna into the world in the first place.
Or perhaps you wanted to punish yourself because you indeed knew that every one of those admissions was the truth. Is that not so, Mrs. Grant?
No.
Very well. Now, have I understood correctly that your memory of events prior to your alleged blackout or panic attack is good?
Mostly, yes.
So, for instance, you recall your first meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Breakspears, which took place in July 1981.
Yes.
Yes. Indeed, you have already given a fairly full account of that. You omitted to mention, however, that Mrs. Breakspear actually named the fee she had in mind, and it was £5,000, wasn't it?
It might have been, yes.
Now, we know that in the end, the fee arranged amounted to £6,500. And the increase of £1,500 was at your insistence, wasn't it?
No, Desi's, my husband's.
Oh, then do you recall another meeting when you told the Breakspears that you had done a bit of research into these informal arrangements and discovered that the going rate, as you put it, was not £5,000 but £6,500?
No.
What, you don't recall it?
No, I never said it. I never did any such research.
Mrs. Grant, you and your husband were heavily in debt when these negotiations took place, were you not?
We were in debt, yes. Who isn't?
But you still maintained, you, that you offered to bear Frank Breakspear's child because you felt sorry for them. This couple you had only recently met and with whom you had the slightest of acquaintance.
Yes. It was Yvonne who insisted on paying, not me.
Mrs. Grant, I'm suggesting to you that it would require a truly heartless woman to enter into such an arrangement, and that all your subsequent actions more than testify to this construction of your character.
I'm not heartless, I'm not. If she had had the baby and not me, she would have had to look after it, wouldn't she? I was having the baby for them. That was the agreement. You keep saying Anna was my responsibility, but what about Frank? What about the father's responsibility?
You were angry when the Breakspears repudiated the supposed contract, weren't you?
Yes, and with justification.
And when you discovered that the contract really was legally unenforceable, that made you even angrier, did it not?
No, I'd always suspected it wasn't.
But it was in a mood of deep antipathy to Mrs. Breakspear that you set out for the coach house on the night in question. Is that not so?
Yes, probably.
Your anger continued unabated during your encounter with the Breakspears. And after leaving their flat, as you were pushing the pram back home through the fog, you just boiled over, didn't you? Do you recall that?
Yes.
Yes. And you later used that very expression when talking to the detective sergeant, didn't you? Boiled over.
Yes.
You retraced your steps to the Breakspears' front door, where you left Anna, didn't you? Knowing full well that by the time she was discovered, she would be either dead or close to death.
No.
You believing, as you later told Detective Sergeant Harris, that at the very least the moral blame and perhaps even the criminal liability would attach to the Breakspears or to one of them. Can you remember admitting that to him later?
I can't remember anything I said to him.
Oh, but you do recall telling him that you just boiled over, do you not?
No.
Come now, Mrs. Grant, you admitted only a moment ago that you did. Which of your answers is the truth?
No. What I meant was that I remember him using that expression here, giving evidence. You're just trying to trip me up.
Lies have a habit of tripping themselves up, Mrs. Grant.
I am not lying.
Mrs. Grant, during the course of your interview with the police, when you had every opportunity to point the finger of accusation at Mrs. Breakspear, why did you instead point it straight at yourself?
I don't know. I simply don't know.
Was it not because you were well aware that you had murdered your baby and wished to relieve this terrible burden on your conscience, Mrs. Grant?
No.
As we have heard, Anna was born on November the 7th at Forchester General Hospital. Were you present when the baby was delivered, Mr. Grant?
Surely, yes. My mum came down from Aberdeen to see to Jamie. Well, the birth was fine, but, well, the baby, something was badly amiss.
What were you later told about her condition?
That she had a really serious heart malformation. They warned me that they'd have to operate straight away, but even so, she'd need more operations when she was older.
Did the physician to whom you spoke hold out any hope that she would one day lead a normal life?
Yes, if the operation was successful, surely.
Returning to February of last year, Mr. Grant, where were you between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. on February the 20th?
At home, I'd been out drinking till the early hours. I came home by taxi. Then, not for the first time, I fell asleep on the sofa, fully clothed.
Did you ascertain whether your wife was at home?
No, I was in no fit state to ascertain anything. But later, I woke up, and Wendy was tugging at my arm, and she kept saying, They've taken her. The Breakspears have taken Anna.
Mr. Grant, you definitely heard her use the words you've just quoted, did you?
Oh, yes.
And did you believe her?
No, I didn't. Well, then I woke up much later. There was a knock at the door, and I went to answer it. And there were two policemen. And they said they had some terrible news.
Mr. Grant, you earlier gave the impression that drink only became a problem to you after Anna's birth. But actually, you had been a heavy drinker for some years beforehand, had you not?
I'd say a steady drinker, not a heavy drinker. I never got drunk, not then.
Indeed. So ruinous had this addiction become that by 1981 you were deeply in debt, weren't you?
I had debts, yes.
You were 6 months in arrears with your mortgage repayments. In April of that year, a hire purchase company took possession of your car, and in May, your telephone was cut off.
That's right.
So, when the Breakspears told you they were prepared to pay a large sum of money for your wife's baby, it must have seemed like manna from heaven.
Well, I don't know what you mean exactly.
To speak plainly, Mr. Grant, you saw nothing wrong in leasing your wife for the purposes of childbearing, because it would enable you to pay off your debts and finance your drinking habits. Is that not right?
Well, it's easy to make it look like that, of course. But we didn't do it just for the money. If Wendy likes someone, she'll do anything for them. That's the way she is.
I see. Now, Mr. Grant, you say that on the night in question, you came home, having been out drinking until the early hours. At what time had you begun drinking the night before?
About 8 o'clock, I went down to Prince Albert with some friends. Then I went on to a few pubs, and then on to a club.
Can you name the club?
It's rather hazy.
Or any of the other public houses?
No, I was pretty tight.
Mr. Grant, I suggest it is simply not possible that you can recall so little of your evening, and yet remember clearly, having been woken, as you maintain, from a deep inebriating slumber, that your wife addressed you in the manner you now allege.
Well, it happened, and I remember it happening.
Yet when the policeman called at 7 a.m. and interviewed you, you said nothing about your wife's return, nothing of her waking you, and nothing of her saying repeatedly that Mr. and Mrs. Breakspear had taken Anna, did you? Did you, Mr. Grant?
No.
What were your feelings when the gynecologist told you and your wife that you could never have children, Mr. Breakspear?
It was a real body blow. I could tell by the look on his face we hadn't exactly won the polls like, but even so, I never expected anything quite so final.
Was it your impression that Mrs. Breakspear was equally upset?
She certainly seemed it.
What did you do in the months that followed?
We were sent a list of adoption agencies to write to, my lord, which we duly did.
And what response did you get?
Well, zero response. The universal thumbs down. It was partly our ages, me especially. When they had a waiting list at all, it was 5 or 7 years long, by which time I'd be what I am now, 44 and speeding down the LB bath chair, according to them. And then there was the pub. They didn't like me running a den of iniquity like a pub. Even though there are so many kids with thirsty parents running around our pub garden in the summertime, you can hardly hear yourself speak. You see, they can pick and choose, those agencies, with 20 families chasing every available baby.
So you learned, did you, that the shortage of babies for adoption had become acute?
Yeah, it's even worse now, I believe.
Did you then devise a plan whereby you and your wife might be able to get a child?
Yes, I'm always getting these bright ideas, my lord. Sometimes I wish I didn't.
And your plan was what?
To find a surrogate mother.
And whom did you approach about this matter?
One of my regulars, Des Grant. He once told me his wife was dying to have another baby, but that they couldn't afford it. So that is to say, Yvonne and I, we knew he was hard up, and that was the reason we approached him first, I'm ashamed to say.
In the spring of 1982, did you learn that Mrs. Grant was pregnant with your child?
Yeah. Yvonne and I, pleased as punch. Yvonne rushed all over the place buying prams and baby care books and such like. Well, I converted the spare room into a nursery. And then, sometime in August, I think it was, Yvonne, she suddenly went all withdrawn. Not moody or anything, just quiet. She did mention in passing, kind of, that the next-door shop had fallen vacant. But it wasn't until January, after Anna was born, and Yvonne had actually bought the lease, that it finally twigged.
What did you come to suspect, Mr. Breakspear?
She'd used Anna's heart as an excuse for backing out, because she wanted the money for the shop.
When Anna was born, did you and your wife visit her in the intensive care unit?
Yeah, we went in together. Well, right enough. It wasn't pleasant, exactly, seeing Anna on a ventilator with a big pad on her tummy where they'd operated on her. But all the same, she looked gorgeous to me. Lovely little face. Suddenly, Yvonne said, "I'm sorry, Frank, I can't. I just can't." And she almost ran out of the ward.
Did you understand her to be rejecting Anna?
Yeah. That night, I knelt in front of her and I begged her to change her mind. It was the only time I have ever gone on my knees to anyone, but she.
I'm sorry, Mr. Breakspear. I realise this must be very painful for you.
Mrs. Forrest, perhaps a short adjournment would be in order.
No, it's all right, my lord. It's all right. I'm all right now.
Now, at 3 a.m. on Saturday, February the 20th, when Wendy Grant called at the coach house, how did she appear to you?
Oh, she was on the brink. It was obvious. Completely exhausted.
Did your wife adopt a reasonable, conciliatory tone?
Chance. She was like I've never seen her before. Spiteful, provocative. She wouldn't even give me the car key so I could take Wendy home. And when she left, Wendy, I mean, I went back to bed, and so did Yvonne, I think. Well, by then we were sleeping apart, you see. And then after about 10 minutes, the doorbell went again. Now, by the time I got to the landing, Yvonne was halfway down the stairs, so I waited at the top light. But you can't see the front door from there, so I don't know what she said or did. And then, when she came back up, she said, it's all right, Wendy just wanted £1 for a taxi.
Did you yourself go downstairs to check whether Mrs. Grant or the baby was there?
No, if only I had. And then at 6 o'clock, I answered the door, and it was a policewoman with Anna in her arms. I could see the caricature lying on the path.
On the path?
Yeah.
Yes. Later, when Anna had failed to respond to artificial respiration, did you say something in particular to Mrs. Breakspear in the presence of the policewoman?
Yes, something to the effect that we were as guilty of Anna's death as Wendy was.
Why did you believe this to be the case?
Well, I was telling Yvonne in a roundabout fashion that I knew she must have seen that caricature outside. I mean, the bit about a taxi was a lie. I mean, since when do you carry pound notes around in your dressing gown?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Breakspear.
Mr. Breakspear, if this version of events is indeed the correct one, why did you hide the truth, both from Constable Trenchard and from the officer who later took a statement from you?
Why? I was trying to protect Yvonne and save our marriage. The marriage is finished now, so it doesn't matter anymore.
Your feelings of bitterness towards your wife are very great, aren't they?
Bitter. I'm sad, more than bitter.
Oh, come now, Mr. Breakspear. When she rejected your child, and as you saw it, put her business interests before your happiness and Anna's best welfare, that must have made you very bitter, surely.
Perhaps.
And with Anna now dead, and your marriage at an end, you have become determined, have you not, to avenge yourself for all the wrongs you believe your wife has done you. Is that not the truth of the matter?
No, sir.
And the
Definitely
method
not.
you have chosen is the most obvious that lay to hand, namely by telling lies and perjuring yourself here during this trial. To fling mud in public and hope that some of it sticks. Is that not correct?
No, sir. Lying is Yvonne's speciality, not mine.
During the 6 months that Mrs. Grant was a patient at Abbott's Cross Mental Hospital, you visited her on a number of occasions, did you not?
Yes, I did.
What was the purpose of these visits? Remember, you are on oath, Mr. Breakspear?
They were purely social.
Purely social? Oh, no, Mr. Breakspears. I'm suggesting to you now that during the course of these visits, you put your heads together and concocted a story in which there was not an iota of truth in order to protect Mrs. Grant and blacken the reputation of an innocent woman.
Yes.
For when the accused left your flat shortly after 4 a.m., what actually happened was that you and your wife went to bed and were undisturbed until Constable Trenchard rang your doorbell at 6:15.
Wendy came back, I swear it.
You have alleged that on hearing the doorbell ring, as you claim, at 4 o'clock, you stood on the landing while your wife went down the stairs.
That's right.
Was the hall light on or off at that stage?
Well, I'm not sure it was on, I suppose.
Really? Because an earlier witness, a neighbour of yours, Miss Simpson, distinctly remembers that after the departure of Wendy Grant, no light came on in your flat.
Well, perhaps it was off then. I can't remember.
Are you saying you stood in total darkness while your wife went down the stairs?
Possibly. Like I say, I just don't remember.
Members of the jury, both couples, the Grants and the Breakspears, must share the blame for the distasteful arrangements they entered into. And all four of them bear, to some degree, the moral responsibility for the tragic consequences. But moral responsibility is not the same as criminal liability, and it is towards the latter you must now direct your minds. So if, as a result of what you have heard, you are satisfied so that you are sure that the accused left her baby where she did with the intention of causing either the baby's death or some really serious interference with the baby's bodily health, then you must find the accused guilty of murder. If you are not so satisfied, but are satisfied so that you are sure that the accused treated her baby with reckless disregard, namely that the risk of death or serious injury would have been obvious to the accused had she given any thought to the matter, you may bring in a lesser verdict of manslaughter. However, the defendant says she observed Mrs. Breakspears come out to the front door and see the baby in the carry cot. If you think that that is true, and if you conclude that Mrs. Grant genuinely and reasonably believed that the baby would be looked after, then you must find her not guilty. Will you now retire, elect a foreman to speak for you on your behalf, and consider your verdict?
Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Will you answer my first question, yes or no? Have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
Yes.
You find the defendant, Wendy Grant, guilty or not guilty of murder?
Not guilty.
Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty of manslaughter?
Guilty.
And is this the verdict of you all?
It is.
Being found guilty of manslaughter, Wendy Grant was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. You can join another jury when our cameras return to bring you another case in the Crown Court.